Well, hello everybody. Welcome back. The Covenant Eschatologist here. Today we are going to be reading the book of Daniel. Now, so much gets into the book of Daniel. I mean, it literally covers all of the just all of the stuff that's in the book of Revelation, where Revelation sort of expounds upon it. It's all wrapped up in the book of Daniel. It really is. I mean, the thing about God, you'll notice, is that He tells the same story kind of over and over again and over again from sort of different perspectives and views on it. And Daniel, I mean, Daniel gets right into like all of the really specific details leading right on up to the time of the end. And if you read Daniel and you read Revelation, you see that they're talking about the same thing. And so you can't separate one from the other. One, they're united. They could truly are united. And it's about the eschatology of the Bible. But let's get into this because Daniel's it's not the longest book in the Bible. I believe it's only like 12 chapters, right? It's 12 chapters of the Bible. And we're going to sit here, we're going to read all 12 chapters. It's going to be awesome, though. I love the book of Daniel. I'm not going to go into explaining all of the particularities of every single little thing because in parts of this it literally just kind of goes through almost like a history book, and it's like this person's gonna, it's like this thing is gonna go over here and it's gonna do that, and then it's gonna turn around and it's gonna kind of come down south, and then it's gonna go over there, and then it's gonna do this, and then because of this and that it's gonna go this way, and then that. So it really gets into like nitty-gritty details if you want to get all historical on it and pull out each and every single individual and ascertain exactly who it was that was doing these things. You certainly could. I know people were, probably much more aware of the particularities of what had happened in their history with regards to all of these particular little events. They could have recounted back and said, "Oh, this was Daniel was talking about that," or Daniel was talking about this. But when it does that, it by no means should be something that can completely elude you because it's all within the framework of the main overarching story that it is showing you. So let's get into this because, we got to get through some chapters here. And Daniel's is just an amazing book. Anyways, it really is. So Daniel is brought to Babylon. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Here, I'll pull this out down here so it's not right in your way there. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasury of his God. God with a little g, right? It's a false God. Then the king said to yeah, we're going to have some crazy names. Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal seed and of the nobles. So, just the nobility of the sons of Israel. Youths in whom was no defect, who were good in appearance, showing insight in every branch of wisdom, being thoroughly knowledgeable and discerning knowledge, and who had ability to stand in the king's palace. And he said for him to teach them the literature and tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank, and appointed that he should be educated 3 years. That they should be educated 3 years, and at the end of which they were to stand before the king. Now among them from the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Then the commander of the officials set names for them, and for Daniel he set the name Belshazzar, for Hananiah, Shadrach, for Mishael, Meshach, and for Azariah, Abednego. Crazy names. So that's where you get the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We all say Abednego, Abednego, Abednego. And of course, Daniel is called Belshazzar. Now, this has got the subtitling Daniel's Heart. But Daniel set in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. Now God granted Daniel loving kindness and compassion before the commander of the officials, the true God, right? And the commander of the officials said to Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youths who are your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king. He's like, the king will kill me if I don't do what he says. But Daniel said to the overseer whom the commander of the officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days, and let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be observed before you, and the appearance of the youths who are eating the king's choice food, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, it was seen that their appearance was better and that they were fatter than all the youths who had been eating the king's choice food. So the overseer continued to withhold their choice food and the wine they were to drink, and kept giving them vegetables. And as for these 4 youths, God gave them knowledge and insight in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams, because God had given him this ability. Then at the end of the days which the king had spoken of for bringing them in after the 3 years, the commander of the officials brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king talked with them, and out of them all, not one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they stood in service before the king. And as for every matter of wisdom and understanding which the king sought from them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and conjurers who were in all his kingdom. And Daniel continued until the 1st year of Cyrus the king. Now this is the chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's troubling dream. Now in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king said to call in the magicians, the conjurers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. Then the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream, because he can't remember his dream. But he knows he had one, and his spirit's, he's like, what was this dream? So he figures all these magicians and so on would know. That's what they're, whatever. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. O king, live forever. Say the dream to your servants, and we will declare the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you'll be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be made a rubbish heap. Oh, man. But if you declare the dream and its interpretation, you will receive from me gifts and a reward and great glory. Therefore, declare to me the dream and its interpretation. Oh, man. You don't want to be one of these guys at that point in time. They have no idea what he was dreaming. They're all just like, oh, boy. They answered a second time and said, let the king say the dream to his servants, and we will declare the interpretation. Oh, man. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you are buying time. insomuch as you have seen that the word from me is firm, that if you do not make the dream known to me, there is only one law for you. Indeed, you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me until the time is changed. Therefore say the dream to me, that I may know that you can declare to me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who is able to declare the matter for the king, insomuch as no great king or powerful ruler has ever asked about a matter like this of any magician, conjurer, or Chaldean. So they're trying to defend themselves now. Moreover, they carry on, the matter which the king has asked is difficult, and there is no one else who could declare it to the king except God's, with a little g, whose dwelling place is not with flesh. Because of this, the king became indignant and very furious, and said for them to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Oh, so the law went forth that the wise men were to be killed. Oh, man. Jesus. And they sought out Daniel and his friends to kill them. Then Daniel replied with discretion and discernment to Arioch, the captain of the king's bodyguard, who had gone forth to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, a powerful official for the king, for what reason is the law from the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and sought from the king that he would give him time in order that he might declare the interpretation to the king. Now God reveals Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the true God, Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to his friends, to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, so that they might seek compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and might belong to him. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise men and knowledge to men of understanding. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might. Even now you have made known to me what we sought from you. For you have made known to us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went in to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me before the king, and I will declare the interpretation to the king. Then Arioch hurriedly brought Daniel before the king and said thus to him, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can make the interpretation known to the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered before the king and said, as for the mystery about which the king is asking, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, nor diviners are able to declare it to the king. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. And he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the last days. Folks, how many times in the Bible do we need to read about the last days? And how many different places, whether it's Genesis 49 or Daniel chapter 2. I mean, how many times are we going to read this before we realize that the last days is talking about the ultimate culmination of the ages, leading to the age of Christ, the age without end, which culminates in the last day. Okay. The last day is not sometime in our future. Okay. This was your dream and the visions of your head while on your bed. As for you, O king, while on your bed, your thoughts turn to what would happen in the future. And he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what will happen. But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me by any wisdom which is in me, more than in any other living man, but for the purpose of making the interpretation known to the king, that you may know the thoughts of your heart. Daniel interprets the dream. You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great image. That image, which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was rising up in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that image was made of fine gold, and its breast and its arms of silver, and its belly and its thighs of bronze. Its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will say its interpretation before the king. Oh, you can only imagine the king is like, whoa. Remember, folks, this is all within the context of the last days. You, O king, are the king over all the kings. You are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men inhabit, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand, and has made you rule with power over them all. You are the head of gold, but after you there will arise another kingdom, inferior to you, then another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule with power over all the earth. Then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron, insomuch as iron crushes and shatters all things. So, like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. Now in that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of iron, insomuch as you saw the iron mixed with the common clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so some of the kingdom will be strong, and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men. They will not cling to one another. So they're united in the kingdom, but they do not cling to one another as far as the seed goes. The Jews will not interbreed with the Gentiles, essentially. Even as iron does not combine with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will cause a kingdom to rise up which will never be destroyed. And that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself stand forever. Now, I just want to stop right there for just a second. If this final kingdom that destroys all these other kingdoms will stand forever, you tell me when its last day will be. When is the last day of the final kingdom that will stand forever, folks? The last days, this is what it's talking about. The last days is the culmination of what I just read to you at its end. And the last day is when this kingdom is erected that will last forever. There is no last day in the eternal forever kingdom. Insomuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has made known to the king what will happen in the future. So the dream is certain, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Tell that to your premillennialists and all these other crazy people that think we're going to get raptured out of here. Or even the postmillennialists, or the amillennialists, or any of them. Full preterism is the eschatology of the Bible. Covenant eschatology, folks. That's why I'm the covenant eschatologist. Come on now. We're not playing games here. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did homage to Daniel and said for them to present to him an offering and fragrant incense. The king answered Daniel and said, "Truly, your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him rule with power over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel sought of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administration of the province of Babylon, while Daniel was at the king's court. Nebuchadnezzar's golden image. We're now into chapter 3. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. It could be 6 cubits wide and 6 cubits of width in the other direction as well. This is out of Babylon. This is the Babylonian Talmud's origins. They started this. It's called the Babylonian Talmud. Well, they say its origin is back with Moses. But the Babylonians, they're the ones that came up with all of the astrology stuff. They divided the whole heavens into 32 different quadrants. And their chief deity was the sun. And in the magic square of their Sigilla Solis, its number equaled 666. 666 was the number of the Sola Sigillis of the Babylonian sun god's magic square. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything to that stuff that they came up with. I'm just pointing out the fact that they had many weird, false religious thoughts and ideas. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent word to assemble the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, and the magistrates, and all the rulers of the provinces were assembled for the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they were standing before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the herald loudly called out, "To you it is said, O peoples, nations, and men of every tongue, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire." So clearly this guy wasn't a monotheist, right? He didn't believe that the God of gods was the one true only God. But he had believed in many gods, unfortunately. Therefore, at that time, when all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, nations, and men of every tongue fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Now, the subheading from here on, it says, "We will not serve your gods." For this reason, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near and brought charges against the Jews. They answered and said to Nebuchadnezzar the king, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, lyre, flute, lygon, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music, is to fall down and worship the golden image. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, do not pay attention to you. They do not serve your gods, and they do not worship the golden image which you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and wrath, said to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then these men were brought before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you are not serving my gods and do not worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, At the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, with all kinds of music, then you shall fall down and worship the image that I have made. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can save you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to respond to you with an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to save us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will save us out of your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods, and we will not worship the golden image that you have set up. Oh, the cojones on these boys. Seriously. They have some serious faith in God, folks. That Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and the image of his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He answered and said to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he said to certain mighty men of valor who were in his military host to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and were cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because the king's word was urgent, and the furnace had been heated to an extraordinary degree, the flame of the fire killed those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and hurriedly stood up. He answered and said to his high officials, Was it not 3 men we cast tied up into the midst of the fire? They answered and said to the king, Certainly, O king. He answered and said, Look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He answered and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no power over the bodies of these men, nor was their hair of their head singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and saved his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's word, and gave up their bodies so as not to serve and not to worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that says anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to a rubbish heap, insomuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to secede in the province of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar declares the Most High God is the subtitling for chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of all the peoples, nations, and men of every tongue that inhabit all the earth, may your peace abound. It has seemed good to me to declare the signs and wonders which the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs, and how strong are his wonders! His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. Nebuchadnezzar's dream of a great tree. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream, and it made me fearful. And these fantasies as I lay on my bed, and the visions in my head kept alarming me. So I gave a decree to bring into my presence all the wise men of Babylon, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Here we go again. Then the magicians, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the diviners came in, and I said the dream to them. This time he tells them the dream. But they could not make its interpretation known to me. But at last Daniel came in before me, whose name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom is a spirit of the holy gods. And I said the dream to him. Now this is according to Nebuchadnezzar, right? This is from Nebuchadnezzar's perspective and point of view. There's not other gods besides God. O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, as he refers to him, since I know that a spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no mystery is difficult for you, say to me the visions of my dream which I have seen, along with its interpretation. Now these were the visions in my head, as I lay on my bed. I was looking, and behold, there was a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew large and became strong, and its height reached to the sky, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Figuratively speaking, folks, we know the earth is round. Its foliage was beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the sky inhabited its branches, and all flesh fed itself from it. I was looking in the visions in my head, and as I lay on my bed, and behold, a watcher, an angel, a holy one, descended from heaven. He called out loudly and said thus, chop down the tree and cut off its branches. Strip off its foliage and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. Yet leave the stump with its roots in the earth, but with a band of iron and bronze around it. In the new grass of the field, and let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him share with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from that of a man, and let the heart of a beast be given to him. And let 7 periods of time pass over him. This edict is by the resolution of the watchers, and the decision is a command of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High is the powerful ruler over the kingdom of mankind, and it gives it to whom he wishes, and sets up over it the lowliest of men. This is the dream which I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, say to me its interpretation, insomuch as none of the wise men of my kingdom is able to make known to me the interpretation. but you are able, for a spirit of the holy gods is in you. Now Daniel interprets the dream. Then Daniel, whose name is Belshazzar, was appalled for a while, as his thoughts were alarming him. The king answered and said, Belshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation alarm you. Belshazzar answered and said, My lord, if only the dream applied to those who hate you, and its interpretation to your adversaries. The tree that you saw, which became large and grew strong, whose height reached to the sky, and was visible to all the land, and unto all the earth, and whose foliage was beautiful, and its fruit abundant, in which was food for all, under which the beasts of the field inhabited, and in whose branches the birds of the sky dwelt. It is you, O king, for you have become great and grown strong, and your greatness has become even greater than and reached to the sky, and your dominion to the end of the earth. But in that the king saw a watcher, a holy one, descending from heaven, an angel, saying, Chop down the tree and destroy it, yet leave the stump with its roots in the earth, but with a band of iron and bronze around it, in the new grass of the field, and let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him share with the beasts of the field until 7 periods of time pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the resolution of the Most High, which has reached my lord, the king, that you may be driven away from mankind, and your place of habitation be with the beasts of the field, and you be given grass to eat like cattle, and be drenched with the dew of heaven. And 7 periods of time will pass over you, until you know that the Most High is the powerful ruler over the kingdom of mankind, and he gives it to whomever he wishes. And in that they say to leave the stump with the roots of the tree. Your kingdom will endure for you after you know that it is heaven that rules with power. Therefore, O king, may my advice seem good to you. Break away now from your sins by doing righteousness, and from your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor, in case there may be a prolonging of your prosperity. All this reached Nebuchadnezzar the king. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. The king answered and said, Is this not Babylon the Great, which I myself has built as a royal house by the strength of my power and for the glory of my majesty? While the word was in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven, saying, King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is said, the kingdom has been removed from you, and you will be driven away from mankind, and your place of habitation will be with the beasts of the field. You will be given grass to eat like cattle, and 7 periods of time will pass over you until you know that the Most High is the powerful ruler over the kingdom of mankind and gives it to whomever he wishes. Immediately, the word concerning Nebuchadnezzar was accomplished, and he was driven away from mankind and began eating grass like cattle. And his body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair had grown like eagles' feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. But at the end of those days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes toward heaven, and my knowledge returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing. But he does according to his will in the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And no one can strike against his hand, no one can stay it, or say to him, "What have you done?" At that time my knowledge returned to me, and my majesty and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom, and my high officials and my nobles began seeking me out. So I was reestablished in my kingdom. An extraordinary greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are true, and his ways are just, and he is able to humble those who walk in pride. Oh, man! Belshazzar's feast, not Belshazzar, not Daniel, but Belshazzar's feast. Belshazzar, the king, held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. Now, this isn't King Nebuchadnezzar any longer. This is now Belshazzar, in the presence of 1,000. When Belshazzar tasted the wine, he said to bring the gold and the silver vessels which Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. Then they brought the gold vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God, which was in Jerusalem. And the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, the fingers of a man's hand came out and began writing opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the back of the hand that did the writing. Then the splendor of the king's face changed, and his thoughts alarmed him, and his hip joints went slack, and his knees were knocking against each other. He was terrified. The king called out loudly to bring in the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the diviners. The king answered and said to the wise men of Babylon, "Any man who can read this writing and declare its interpretation to me shall be clothed with purple and have a necklace of gold around his neck and rule with power as third ruler in the kingdom." Because his father and him, and then the third ruler. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or make known its interpretation to the king. It's just like, what is this? Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and the splendor of his face changed even further, and his nobles were perplexed. The queen entered the banquet hall because of the words of the king and his nobles. The queen answered and said, "O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts alarm you or the splendor of your face be changed. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is a spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of your father, illumination, insight, and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, set him as chief of the magicians, conjurers, Chaldeans, and diviners. This was because an extraordinary spirit, knowledge and insight, interpretation of dreams, explanation of enigmas, and solving of difficult problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Let Daniel now be summoned, and he will declare the interpretation. Daniel interprets the writing on the wall. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, Are you that Daniel who is one of the exiles from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? Now I have heard about you that a spirit of the spirit of the gods is in you, and that illumination, insight, and extraordinary wisdom have been found in you. Just now the wise men and the conjurers were brought in before me that they might read this writing and make its interpretation known to me, but they could not declare the interpretation of the message. But I personally have heard about you, that you are able to give interpretations and solve difficult problems. Now, if you are able to read the writing and make its interpretation known to me, you will be clothed with purple and wear a necklace of gold around your neck, and you will rule with power as the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let your gifts remain with you, or give your rewards to someone else. However, I will read the writing to the king and make the interpretation known to him. O king, the Most High God granted the kingdom, grandeur, glory, and majesty to Nebuchadnezzar your father. And because of the grandeur which he bestowed on him, all the peoples, nations, and men of every tongue feared and were in dread before him. Whomever he wished he killed, and whomever he wished he kept alive, and whomever he wished he raised up, and whomever he wished he made low. But when his heart was raised up, and his spirit became so strong that he behaved arrogantly, he was deposed from his royal throne, and his glory was taken away from him. He was also driven away from the sons of men, and his heart was made like that of beasts. And his place of habitation was with the wild donkeys. He was given grass to eat like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of the sky until he knew that the Most High God is the powerful ruler over the kingdom of mankind, and that he sets up over it whomever he wishes. Yet you, his son, Belshazzar, have not made your heart lowly, even though you knew all of this. But you have raised yourself up against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before you. And you and your nobles, your wives and your concubines have been drinking wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, hear, or know. But the God in whose hand you are your life, breath, and all your ways you have not honored. Then the hand was sent from him, and this writing was inscribed. Now this is the writing that was inscribed. Min, tekel, opharsin. This is the interpretation of the message. Min, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found lacking. Paris, your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belshazzar said the word, and they clothed Daniel with purple, and put a necklace of gold around his neck, and issued a proclamation concerning him, that he now would be the third powerful ruler in the kingdom. That same night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed. So Darius the Mede received the kingdom at about the age of 62. Darius officials seek to accuse Daniel, is the head subtitling for chapter 6. It seemed good to Darius that he set 120 satraps over the kingdom, that they would be in charge of the whole kingdom, and over them 3 commissioners, of whom Daniel was one, that these satraps might be accountable to them, and that the king might not suffer loss. Then this Daniel began distinguishing himself among the commissioners and satraps, I guess you might call them, because an extraordinary spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the entire kingdom. Daniel stuck out. He stood out no matter where he was put. Then the commissioners and satraps began seeking to find ground of accusation against Daniel in regard to matters of the kingdom. They were exceedingly jealous. But they were not able to find any ground of accusation or evidence of corruption, insomuch as he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption was to be found in him. Then these men said, "We will not find any ground of accusation against this Daniel unless we find it against him with regard to the law of his God." Then these commissioners and satraps came by agreement to the king and said thus to him, "King Darius, live forever! All the commissioners of the kingdom, the prefects, and the satraps, the high officials and the governors have counseled together that the king should establish a statute and enforce an injunction that anyone who seeks to make a petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days shall be cast into the lion's den. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the written document so that it may not be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked." Therefore King Darius signed the written document, that is, the injunction. Now when Daniel knew that the written document was signed, he entered his house. Now in his roof chamber he had windows open toward Jerusalem, and he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God, as he had been doing previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel seeking to make a petition and making supplication before his God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the king's injunction, "Did you not sign an injunction that any man who seeks to make a petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days is to be cast into the lion's den?" The king answered and said, "The word is certain, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked." Then they answered and said before the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the injunction which you have signed, but keeps seeking to make his petition 3 times a day." Then as soon as the king heard this word, he was greatly distressed within himself, and set his mind on saving Daniel. And even until sunset he kept exerting himself to deliver him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, Know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or statute which the king establishes may be changed. Daniel in the lion's den is the subheading of this portion of the Bible, as we have it. Then the king said the word, and Daniel was brought in and cast into the lion's den. The king answered and said to Daniel, your God, whom you constantly serve, will himself save you. And a stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. And the king sealed it with his own signet ring, and with the signet rings of his nobles, so that nothing would be changed in regard to Daniel. Then the king went off to his palace and spent the night fasting, not eating any food. And no entertainment was brought before him, and his sleep fled from him. Then the king arose at dawn, at the break of day, and he hurriedly went to the lion's den. When he had come near the den to Daniel, he cried out with a troubled voice. The king answered and said to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you constantly serve, been able to save you from the lions? Then Daniel spoke to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, insomuch as I was found innocent before him. And also toward you, O king, I have done no harm. Then the king was greatly pleased and sent for Daniel to be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no harm whatsoever was found on him, because he had believed in his God. The king then said the word, and they brought those men who had brought charges against Daniel, and they cast them, their children, and their wives into the lion's den. And they had not reached the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then Darius the king wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every tongue who were inhabiting all the land, may your peace abound. I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom, men are to fear and be in dread before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and enduring forever. And his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed, and his dominion will be unto the end. He saves and delivers and does signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has also saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel enjoyed success in the kingdom of Darius and in the kingdom of Cyrus the Persian. The vision of the four beasts. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his head as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and said the following summary of the matter. Daniel answered and said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And a heart of a man was given to it. That first beast was King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And behold, another beast, a second one in the likeness of a bear. And it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. That was the Medes and the Persians. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. That was the Grecians, under Alexander the Great, whose empire was divided into 4 quadrants. They said he conquered the world with such ridiculous speed, it was almost as if God had been helping him to achieve it. It was just stupid how fast he just conquered the whole world, and then his kingdom was divided into 4 parts. After this I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, fearsome and terrifying and extraordinarily strong. And it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that there were before it. And it had 10 horns. This was Rome, the legs of iron, mingled with the clay. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great boasts. Now, Nero Caesar was the 6th of the 5 kings that had fallen, of the 7-headed beast. And the one head that was Nero. And another one must come. But he must remain but a little while. And then one who is of the 7, who is the 8th, who is also the 8th. The 8th will also be the king. So, that one horn that you see is like unto the 7th head. And it uproots 3 horns in its midst. Now there was 3 Caesars that very quickly died. They only remained a very short while. So while those 3 were uprooted, the last one that remained was Titus and Vespasian. I forget which one was which. I think Titus was the son of Vespasian. Although I could have it backwards, I'm sorry. But either way, they came down to destroy Jerusalem. The father went back home, and I believe it was Titus. Maybe it was Vespasian, the son, remained and destroyed the temple. I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His clothing was like white snow. Now, think about this, guys. This is all in the context of the 1st century, under Rome, in Jerusalem. But while this is going on earth, now we shift our attention to what's going on in heaven. I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His clothing was like white snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with fire. Its wheels were a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, and the books were opened. Now you remember, at the last day, when the time comes where he judges the living and the dead, And all those that die are brought up before the great white throne judgment, and the books are opened in the book of Revelation. Right? The time of the resurrection. And at that time, yeah, I mean, that's what this is talking about. This is a direct correlation to Revelation. The books were opened. Then I kept looking because of the sound of the great boastful words from which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was killed, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. Now, as for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was given to them for an appointed season of time. Now, I kept looking in the night visions. No, I want to stop right there. If you recall in my last video, I had pointed out that Israel was actually part of Rome, okay? And there's the beast from the land that speaks like a dragon. It has two horns. It looks like a lamb, speaks like a dragon. From the land, like a lamb. That's the Sadducees and the Pharisees. That was the religious cultists. But this is a beast. It's a lamb. It looks like a lamb, but it speaks like a dragon. And while this horn is there, these three horns are uprooted, essentially, in the presence of this one individual horn. Now, remember, you recall, there's almost like this duality thing going on. There's the Roman situation, but it also like mirrors the Israelite situation in Israel. It's so crazy. There's like a dual fulfillment in this. I mean, literally, Israel was part of Rome. So you could, I mean, just it is what it is. But if you recall, King Solomon, the number of his worth was 666 talents of gold yearly. That's what he took in. And King Solomon sought to kill the man that was going to take his kingdom. And the man had to flee into Egypt to survive. Now, the same thing happened under King Herod the Great. Now, King Solomon enlarged the temple. He took to himself many wives. He increased his wealth, and he enlarged. He had a ton of horses. And God specifically told him, do not enlarge your horses. Do not enlarge the temple and your kingdom. Do not take for yourselves many wives. Do not do these things. And he did all of them. Now, King Solomon, again, he wrote the book of Proverbs. He walked with God, but only in part. He only partly walked with the Lord. God took him by the hand as King David's son and brought him to the place where he was to be, just like God took Pharaoh by the hand and raised him up throughout his life doing nothing but wickedness and evil and worshiping false gods. Yet God, Yahweh, had him by the hand and raised him up for this very purpose, that he would smash him down and make known to all the world his power and glory. This is how God works, folks. But also, King Herod the Great, he too sought to kill Jesus, who was going to take away his kingdom, and Jesus had to flee to Egypt. And so, with the Jews being under the Babylonian Talmud and their solar sigillus of 666 of their main deity God, and King Solomon taking in 666 talents of gold in disobedience to God. And then in the second temple with King Herod the Great, Mystery Babylon the Great, there's this sort of, everything is sort of conflated along with itself. Like there's dual fulfillments of the types and the shadows that are Like when the sun shines, sometimes one shadow is cast one way and the other shadow is kind of cast the other way. So it's just the craziest thing. And folks, people have been debating the particularities of the specific details of what's going on here for almost 2,000 years. But King Herod had 7 sons. It says, these are 7 kings, and 5 have fallen, and one is not yet come, but he will remain, and all the and one will, and another who was and who is not and yet will be. Even he is the 8th, and goes into perdition, which is destruction. He goes into hellfire. Is almost in some sort of a way you could almost say that Solomon was, in a sense, how they says John the Baptist was Elijah. Well, you could say that this 8th one was Solomon to come, the one who was and who is not and yet will be, who seeks to kill all the Christians and what have you. It could have very well have been Simon Bar Giora. Oh, he was very kind. If you read any of the Jewish literature, oh, he was so kind to the poor and blah, blah, blah. And they make him out like he was just this great, humble man. He came out of the temple wearing white and a purple robe, and he minted coins saying the salvation of Israel, acting like he was the Messiah. And you can bet your little behind he was persecuting the Christians. If you stuck a Christian in there, he would have rather have seen you slaughtered to death than be kind and pious and meek to you. So there's all these different you could almost say Simon Bar Giora was like the King Solomon of that time. I mean, he was the 8th of the Herodian dynasty, who was of them, but he came out of them. So there's a variety of crazy ways in which everybody's trying to interpret this. And obviously we know the beast from the land is the beast that was cast into the fire, because the Roman Empire eventually was conquered by our perseverance as Christians. They were killing us and massacring Christians up until the year 313, when they fully converted to Christianity, because somehow the love of God broke through after slaughtering Christians for so long that their hearts were taken by God, and he changed them. Excuse me. So, I'm not, you're going to hear a lot of crazy things about the book of Revelation, but basically the 2 things that I have shown you, and of course you have Nero Caesar is 666 and Neron Kaiser. Neron Kaiser is 666 in Hebrew and Nero Caesar is 616 in Latin. But it actually doesn't equal 660 and 6. It's a bunch of numbers, and you have to add them all together, and then you get Nero Caesar. It could be a direct correlation to Nero Caesar, but Nero Caesar, again, was only under the influence of the Jews that surrounded him. He married a Jew. All of his inner court were Jews, and his counselors and advisors were Jews. They were. It's just what it is. So even though Nero was a Roman, even he was conflated with the Judaism that was around him and the Jews that were influencing him. So like I say, man, like Rome's known as the city of 7 hills, Israel's known as the city of 7 mountains, and the 7 mountains that the woman sits upon, and the waters that surround her representing the multitudes and nations and peoples and tongues being Rome. And you're seeing these beasts coming out of the seas, right? So I just went off there. I just went off there because I felt that kind of needed somewhat of a little bit of an explanation. He's going to get into some very sort of in-depth history about the things that were going to happen. He doesn't name any names, but he tells of the events. And you would really have to do a really historical study to follow that path and track it through. But basically, both of the things that I have told you are in a sense true. But, you know, it takes very strong discernment to know exactly what the exact particularities of the details of this thing are. But, again, all of this is within the context of the last days, the end times, and it's all within the context of what happened in 70 AD in the first century. But anyways, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. Now this is after the books have been opened, and the myriads and multitudes of people have been brought up essentially before the Lord. There are multitudes of people. And in fact, I almost want to read that again. And thousands upon thousands were attending him, right? And myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat. That's the 144,000. Okay, only Christians could be raised from the dead to be under the altar who had died and were beheaded for the namesake of Jesus Christ. And once those 144,000 virgins from the 12 tribes of Israel had been beheaded and killed and brought up before the altar, nobody else, it says right in Revelation, nobody else was able to be resurrected until the 1,000 years were completed. Now, the 1,000 years were from the time that Satan was bound, which I posit would have been at, the baptism of Christ, until the coming of the Lord at 70 AD. It was a 40-year millennium. It was a 40-year millennial reign of Christ on the earth. He said, I am with you always. I go to my Father's kingdom, but I am with you always. I will send the helper. I will send my spirit to indwell inside of you. I am with you even unto the end of the age. I am with you always. And as you know, God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and a day with the Lord is as 1,000 years. And this is a term that the Hebrew people would use, not meaning literally 1,000 when they're speaking poetically or hyperbolically or figuratively. So it does not have to be a literal 1,000 years. It's like basically like a lifetime for these people. They were still alive. They were grown-ups, and there was 40 more years to come before Christ was going to come. And Daniel's 70 weeks expired 3.5 years after Jesus Christ was crucified and rose from the dead, which is why they came to Paul and says, they must have been murmuring about something. And Paul said, the Lord is not slow concerning his coming. They were like, Paul, where is it? How come he hasn't done everything? He says, but not wanting that any of you should perish. There's this time that he's given us here so that, all those that came before us would not be made perfect apart from us, because the harlot had to fill up the measure of her cup so that God could come and pour out his wrath and then raise them up. So they had to be there to be persecuted and to be killed. Apart from them, nobody would have been made perfect before God, because he had to come and finish the work. That's why he said those things. But anyways, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, again, with the clouds, like the cloud that received up Christ, one like a son of man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days, and he came near before him. And to him was given dominion. Now here this is. And I kept looking in the night visions. So now oftentimes God will show the same thing happening from a different perspective, from a different vantage point. So now he's reiterating what he had just told us. from a different vantage point. This isn't a linear thing where it's like the story is going and going and going and going and going. Sometimes he backtracks and he tells the same thing again from a different vantage point. So I kept looking in the night visions in his mind's eye. And behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days. This is the time of Christ's resurrection. And he came near before him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every tongue might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will never be taken away. And his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. That's just like sort of a quick synopsis of the whole kind of a thing, in a sense. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions of my head kept alarming me. I came near to one of those who were standing by and began seeking out from him the exact meaning of all this. So he said it to me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Now this is Daniel. He's coming near unto, obviously one of the watchers or an angel in his vision that he is in. He goes near to one that is near him in his vision to get the interpretation of this. This is how Daniel ascertained the visions that he got, the wisdom that he received from the messengers of God, the angels, Gabriel. These great beasts, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings who will arise from the earth. But the saints of the highest one will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, for all ages to come. Then I desire to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast, which is different from all the others, extraordinarily fearsome, with its teeth of iron and its claws of bronze, which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And of course, Rome was destroyed as well. So I don't want to just say that Rome wasn't consumed with fire. Rome got ramsacked by the Ostrogoths and all these other groups came in there and just like pounded on Rome as well and destroyed it ultimately. Took it over. And the meaning of the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, and before which 3 of them fell. Namely, that horn which had eyes and a mouth speaking great boasts, and which was larger in appearance than its associates. I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and overcoming them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given in favor of the saints of the highest one, and the season arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. So, it's very hard to understand all of the things in Daniel. It really is. But we all know that, it's all within the confines of the 1st century. Thus he said, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth, and tread it down and crush it. Remember, it's the beast with feet like the bear, the body like the leopard, and the head, the mouth like the lion, the face like the lion. That is the 4th beast, who's different than all of the other ones. It's like an amalgamation of them all. And in fact, Rome just sort of conquers people and enslaves them and takes them in and makes them their people. Rome, I'm not saying America does this, but Rome was kind of a lot like America in that anybody could come in and become a Roman, but anybody could join the military and be a Roman. It wasn't just an ethnic thing. It was literally like we got a society here. Come be a part of it. Worship our gods. Hail Caesar. You'll be a Roman. It's just kind of how it was. It was just like America, salute the flag and be an American, wherever you come from. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, and will make low 3 kings. So again, 3 kings were killed. 3 of the Caesars were killed. And they're called Caesars, right? They're not called kings. But the Jews said, we have no king but Caesar. Let Christ's blood be upon us and our children. And again, 3 kings were very quickly, as if it was the 7th head. Very quickly, 3 kings were knocked out. They only remained a short while. But then the 8th one came out. And again, there's sort of like a duality going on here. He will speak words against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One. And he will intend to make changes in seasons and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. That's 3.5 years. He will speak words against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One. He will wear them down, and he will intend to make changes in seasons and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court will sit for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated and destroyed forever. Then the reign, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the Highest One. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. Now, this is not saying virtually every single human being on the entire face of all the earth will serve Jesus, okay? Will serve God. But if you look, pretty much in every nation across the world, there's churches. I just posted a video on my Facebook group, Biblical Christianity. This guy, like, literally in Africa, like in the jungle, and he's a Christian. He's like, you know, as the good book says, we are the stewards of the earth and all this. He was like, he's got this like crazy, he's the medicine man. He's got this like deer hide thing on his head, and he's all dressed up in sort of medicine man regalia. And he's a Christian. It's like, it's the craziest thing. And Paul said he had preached the gospel message to every creature, to all of creation. He had preached it to every nation. He had preached it. So, you know, I used to hear pastors say, you know, it needs to be preached out into all the world, and then the end can come. And Paul's like, I already did that, dude. But, you know, anyways, figuratively in the sense. And all the dominions will serve and obey him. At this point, the matter of this revelation ended. I mean, he got right to the end of it. And at this point, the matter of this revelation ended. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarming to me, and the splendor of my face changed. But I kept the matter in my heart. The vision of the ram and the goat. Chapter 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one which appeared to me previously. And I looked in the vision, and it happened that while I was looking, I was in the citadel of Susa, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I myself was beside the Julia canal. Then I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a ram which had 2 horns was standing in front of the canal. Now the 2 horns were long, but one was longer than the other, with the longer one coming up last. I saw the ram butting westward, northward, southward, and no other beast could stand before it, nor was there anyone to deliver from its power. This was the Medes and the Persians. But it did as it pleased and magnified itself. And while I was considering, behold, a male goat was coming from the west over the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn between its eyes. This was the Grecians. This thing was moving so fast. It was like he was hovering over the ground with the wings of an eagle, zipping right through, getting ready to conquer the known world. That was the Grecians, and it was divided into 4 quadrants after what was his name? Something the Great. Alexander the Great. After Alexander the Great was conquered, it was divided into four sections. Then it came up to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing in front of the canal, and ran at it in his strong wrath. And I saw it reach the side of the ram, and it was enraged at it, and it struck the ram and broke its 2 horns in pieces. And the ram had no strength to stand in opposition to it, so it threw it down to the ground and trampled on it. And there was none to deliver the ram from its power. Then the male goat magnified itself exceedingly. But as soon as it was mighty and conquered the whole world, Alexander the Great, the large horn was broken, and in its place there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. That's the 4-headed leopard with the wings like an eagle. Alexander the Great. And out of one of them came forth a rather small horn, and it grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land, toward Israel. And then it grew up to the hosts of heaven and caused some of the hosts and some of the stars to fall down to earth, and it trampled them down. And it even magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the hosts, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. And on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn along with the regular sacrifice, and it will throw truth down to the ground and do its will and succeed. Now, many say that this was I got so many names I gotta remember. The guy that slaughtered the pig on the altar and all of that. Oh, jeez, what's his name? Oh, for crying out loud! Everybody knows what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, it's it's been a long night. I've been selling cars today, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill myself when I have to look back at this. But everybody knows what I'm talking about. There was the guy that went in there, he slaughtered a pig on the altar and set up like an idol to Saturn or something ridiculous like that. Anyways, well, it happened. There was a guy that went in there and he basically, he did his thing. He did whatever he wanted. Then, and on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn along with the regular sacrifice, and will throw truth down to the ground and do its will and succeed. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, "How long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply, while the transgression causes desolation?" Oh, so as to allow both the holy place and the host to be trampled. He said to me, "For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be made righteous." Antiochus Epiphanes. That's what it is. Antiochus Epiphanes slaughtered the pig, a sow, on the altar of God. Daniel seeks to understand the vision. Now, I don't want to dogmatically say that, but yeah, I believe that is Antiochus Epiphanes here. Daniel seeks to understand the vision. Now it happened when I, Daniel, had seen the vision, that I sought to understand it, and behold, standing before me was one who had the appearance of a man. And I heard the voice of a man between the banks of Ulaia, and he called out and said, "Gabriel, give this man understanding of what has appeared." so that he came near to where I was standing. And when he came, I was terrified and fell on my face. But he said to me, Son of man, understand that the vision pertains to the time of the end. Okay, so it was not Antiochus Epiphanes. It was not. Because Antiochus Epiphanes was just some douchebag who went in there and he did what he did. This is pertaining to the time of the end. Okay, so Antiochus Epiphanes was not the time of the end. That was just something that had happened along the way getting there. Now, while he was talking to me, I sank into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. But he touched me and made me stand upright. Then he said, Behold, I am going to let you know what will happen at the final period of the indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end. The ram which you saw with the two horns is the kings of Media and Persia. Now the shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn that is between his eyes is the first king, Alexander the Great. Now this is why, guys, this stuff right here, it's so prophetic, it's so accurate that they all try to say that this book was written after the events had happened. Because God can tell the future, but they know if this stuff is as it says, then this proves that there is a God in heaven. It doesn't matter what some scientist somewhere says or anything. This is proof positive. God is literally declaring that what was going to happen for hundreds of years in empires that were going to come and fall and come and fall. And the broken horn and the four horns that stood in its place are four kingdoms that will take their stand from his nation, although not with his power. So it's not going to have the same power that Alexander the Great had, but it will come from those nations. It'll take those kingdoms from it. And in the latter period of their reign, when the transgressors have run their course, a king will stand, insolent and skilled in intrigue. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. And he will see. This is talking, I believe, about Nero Caesar, because he just inherited Rome. In fact, his mother murdered his uncle or whoever who was the Caesar, so that he could become the Caesar. So he didn't, by no means did he like go out and conquer and become the king. It was not by his own power that this conniving, cunning individual would come about. And he will destroy to an astonishing degree and succeed and do his will. He will destroy mighty men and the holy people, and through his insight he will cause deceit to succeed by his hand. And he will magnify himself in his heart, and he will destroy many while they are at ease. Nero was literally stark, raving mad, crazy. And he burnt Rome down. He burnt down his own city so that he could rebuild it. And they blamed it on the Christians and hung them on stakes and was killing them because the Jews were like, yeah, just blame the Christians. Screw those guys. They're just a bunch of pains in our butt. Let's kill all of them. And while they were all at ease in Rome, he was like burning the city down, playing the fiddle, just fiddling away like a crazy man. He used to make people sit there and listen to his plays that he would perform for like 10, 12 hours straight, and he wouldn't let anybody go to the bathroom, and women couldn't leave to go give birth to their children. They had to come, and they would give birth to their kids sitting right there in the amphitheaters, like right on the steps. And when he was done, everybody had to applaud him and sing his praises. He was a lunatic. He actually tied Christians to stakes and ran over to them with animal skins on them and ripped off their genitalias. He would dress up in normal clothes and go out into the streets like with his rabble-rousing friends and like rob people and steal stuff and like burn people's houses or just break things and do like all sorts of evil, kidnap people and torture them, and just was a lunatic. The guy was crazy. but he will be broken without hands. Nero got terrified. He ran off and committed suicide. So it wasn't by the hand of any empire or crazy people that came to slay him. He committed suicide. He took his own life. And what had appeared about the evenings and the mornings, which has been told, is true. But as for you, conceal the vision, for it pertains to many days in the future. So Daniel is told to seal up the vision of this prophecy. It's not for you, it's for many days in the future. And again, we read in Revelation, John, do not seal up the words of this prophecy, for the time is at hand. The time is near. Do not seal them up. Then I, Daniel, was exhausted and sick for days. Then I rose up again and did the king's work, but I was appalled at what had appeared, and there was none to make me understand it. Daniel's prayer of supplication is the subtitling for Daniel chapter 9. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, from the seed of the Medes, who was made king over the kingdom of the Chaldeans, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, discerned in the books the number of the years concerning which the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah the prophet for the fulfillment of the laying waste of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. So I gave my face to the Lord God to seek him by prayer and supplications, with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. And I prayed to Yahweh my God and confessed and said, Alas, O Lord, the great and awesome God. Now here, this is the synopsis of all these things. The laying waste of Jerusalem. The harlot is to be laid waste. The one who stones the prophets and kills the saints. And I prayed to Yahweh my God and confessed and said, Alas, O Lord, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant and loving kindness for those who love him and keep his commandments. We have sinned and committed iniquity and acted wickedly and rebelled, even turning aside from your commandments and judgments. Moreover, we have not listened to your slaves, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our kings, our princes, and our fathers, and all the people of the land. To you, O Lord, belongs righteousness, but to us open shame, as it is this day to the men of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and all Israel, those who are nearby and those who are far away, and all the countries to which you have banished them, because of their unfaithful deeds which they have committed against you. O Yahweh, to us belongs open shame, to our kings, our princes, and our fathers, because we have sinned against you. To the Lord our God belong compassion and forgiveness, for we have rebelled against him. Nor we have listened. You can tell he's really pouring it on thick to God in a way. It's like he's sort of inferring, give us mercy, Lord. Nor have we listened to the voice of Yahweh our God, to walk in his laws which he put before us through his slaves the prophets. Indeed, all Israel has trespassed against your law, even turning aside, not listening to your voice. So the curse has been poured out on us, along with the oath which was written in the law of Moses. Remember the mountain of cursings and blessings? The songs of cursings and blessings. The servant of God, for we have sinned against him. Thus he has established his words which he had spoken against us and against our judges who judged us, to bring on us great calamity. For under the whole heaven there has not been done anything like what has been done to Jerusalem. As it is written in the law of Moses, all this calamity has come on us. Yet we have not entreated the favor of Yahweh our God by turning from our iniquity and acting wisely in your truth. Therefore Yahweh has watched over the calamity and brought it on us. For Yahweh our God is righteous with respect to all his deeds, which he has done, but we have not listened to his voice. So now, O Lord our God, who have brought your people out of the land of Egypt with a strong hand, and have made a name for yourself, as it is this day, we have sinned. We have acted wickedly. O Lord, in accordance with all your righteousness, let now your anger and your wrath turn away from your city, Jerusalem, your holy mountain. For because of our sins and the iniquities of our fathers, Jerusalem and your people have become a reproach to all those around us. So now, our God, listen to the prayer of your slave and to his supplications, and for your sake, O Lord, let your face shine shine on your desolate sanctuary. Oh my God, incline your ear and listen. Open your eyes and see our desolations in the city which is called by your name. For we are not presenting our supplications before you on account of any righteousness of our own, but on account of your abundant compassion. Boy, he's laying it on thick to God, man. Oh Lord, listen. Oh Lord, forgive. Oh Lord, give heed and take action. For your own sake, my God, do not delay, because your city and your people are called by your name. Now while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before Yahweh, my God, in behalf of the holy mountain of God, and while I was still speaking in prayer, then the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision previously, touched me. Remember, Gabriel's the angel that came to Mary and Joseph. In my extreme weariness about the time of the evening offering, then he made me understand and spoke with me and said, O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you insight with understanding. At the beginning of your supplications, the word was issued. So I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. So understand the message and gain understanding and what has appeared. 70 weeks and the Messiah. 70 weeks have been determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the Holy of Holies. So you are to know and to have insight that from the going out of a word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 70 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be restored and rebuilt with plaza and moat, and even in times of distress. Then after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And its end will come with a flood, even to the end. There will be war. Desolations are decreed. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he will make sacrifice and grain offering cease. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even unto a complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. Now, there's a lot of numbers in there. Now, at the Feast of Passover, that's a week-long feast. And they let all the pilgrims in, and then they surrounded them and trapped them in there. And they stopped sacrificing. And then there was a final end of all the sacrifices that ever could be made when the altar was smashed like a chalk stone after 3.5 years of the siege of Israel. I believe there was a 5-month siege on the temple itself, and then it fell. And you hear of the ones that came out like locusts, with hair like ladies and teeth like teeth of iron, and they were given power to sting, but not to kill. They couldn't annihilate all of them, but they were like they were done up in hyacinth, and I believe they're in the colors of brimstone and red. Rome's color was red, right? Well, in any event, Daniel's terrifying vision of a man. See, it's talking about, all of this is the time of the end. It's when the temple is destroyed, that all sin is put away. And remember, Christ died and was raised again to deal with sin. He first came to deal with sin, and then he came to deal with our salvation when he put away the law, when he put away all the jots and the tittles of the law that could never perfect us. And the new covenant was fully imbued and endowed upon us. Paul said, I am being saved. Like I have not yet received it. I have not yet achieved it just yet. I'm running the race. I'm getting there. And Paul knew he was going to be beheaded. He said, I will be poured out like a cup. God was giving the visions of how they were going to die to the apostles, that they would know how it was they were going. Like he said, one would be lifted up. He raised open his arms like you're going to be crucified. These people knew their own destruction. And he was like, I am fighting the race, man. I know they're going to chop off my head. I am not there yet. I have not yet obtained it. I am going. Only when I die will my body be raised everlasting, immortal. And I will have won the race. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belshazzar. And the word was true, and one of great conflict, but he understood the word and had an understanding of what had appeared. In those days, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 entire weeks. I did not eat any tasty food, nor did meat or wine enter my mouth. Nor did I use any ointment at all until the entire 3 weeks were fulfilled. And on the 24th day of the 1st month, while I was by the bank of the great river that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and beheld there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose loins were girded with a belt of pure fine gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl. That's like a stone. This guy was rugged. He had the appearance of lightning. His flesh was beaming with light. He looked like a bolt of lightning in its brightness. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms were like feet, like the gleam of burnished bronze. And the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. Now I, Daniel, alone saw the vision that appeared. But the men who were with me did not see the vision that had appeared. Nevertheless, a great terror fell on them, and they ran away to hide themselves. So I alone remained, and saw this great vision that appeared. Yet no might remained in me, for my outward splendor turned to deathly pallor, and I retained no might. But I heard the sound of his words, and as soon as I heard the sound of his words, I fell into a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. Then behold, A hand touched me and set me shaking on my knees, on my hands and knees. And he said to me, O Daniel, man of high esteem, understand the words that I am about to speak to you, and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you gave your heart to understand this and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia was standing against me for 21 days. Then behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. Now I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to give you understanding of what will happen to your people in the last days. For the vision pertains to the days yet future. This is an angel that has come, that was sent by God, and he was battling against the prince of Persia. There was one of Satan's angels that was warring against him, that was ruling over Persia. Now when he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and became speechless, because he knows. And behold, one in the likeness of the sons of men was touching my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke and said to him who was standing before me, it's crazy the power that God imbued into his angels, what they can do. Oh my Lord, as a result of the vision that appeared, pains have come upon me, and I have retained no might. Now how can such a servant of my Lord talk with such as my Lord? As for me, right now, no might stands within me, nor does any breath remain in me. Then this one with the appearance of a man touched me again and strengthened me. And he said, O man of high esteem, do not be afraid. Peace be with you. Gather strength and be strong. Now as soon as he spoke to me, I received strength and said, My Lord, speak, for you have strengthened me. Then he said, Do you know why I came to you? But I shall now return to fight against the prince of Persia. So I am going forth, and behold, the prince of Greece is about to come. However, I will tell you what is inscribed in the writing of truth. Now there is no one who exerts strength with me against these forces, except Michael your prince. This is Michael, the archangel, was the angel that was set over Israel. God appoints different angels for different regions of the world. Now I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood to strengthen and to be a fortress for him. So now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings are going to stand in Persia. Then a 4th will gain far more riches than all of them. As soon as he becomes strong through his riches, he will arouse the whole empire against the kingdom of Greece. And a mighty king will stand, and he will dominate with great dominion and do as he pleases. But as soon as he stands, his kingdom will be broken up and parceled out towards the 4 winds of heaven. But not to his own descendants, nor to his domination, which he dominated, for his kingdom will be uprooted and given to others besides him. That's Alexander the Great. Then the king of the south will grow strong, along with one of his princes, who will go strong over him and obtain dominion. Indeed, his dominion will be a great dominion. And after some years he will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south will come to the king of the north to carry out an equitable agreement. But she will not return her position of power, nor will he continue to stand with his power, but she will be given up along with those who brought her in, and the one who fathered her, as well as he who strengthens her in those times. But one of the descendants of her line will stand in his place, and he will come against their military force and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he will deal with them and display strength, and also their gods with their metal images and their desirable vessels of silver and gold will bring into captivity to Egypt. And he on his part will stand back from attacking the king of the north for some years. Then the latter will enter the kingdom of the king of the south, but will return to his own land. And his sons will wage war, so they will gather a multitude of great forces, and one of them will keep on coming and overflow and pass through, that he may again wage war up to his very fortress. And the king of the south will be enraged and go forth and fight with the king of the north. Then the latter will cause a great multitude to stand, but that multitude will be given into the hand of the former. Then the multitude will be carried away. His heart will be lifted up, and he will cause tens of thousands to fall. Yet he will not prevail. And the king of the north will again cause a much greater multitude than the former to stand. And at the end of the times of those years, he will keep on coming, and a great military force and much equipment. Now in those times many will stand against the king of the south, and violent ones amongst your people will also lift themselves up in order to cause the vision to stand. But they will fall down. Then the king of the north will come, cast up a siege ramp, and capture a well-fortified city. And the might of the south will not stand, not even their choicest troops, for there will be no strength to make a stand. But he who comes against him will do as he pleases, and no one will be able to stand in opposition to him. He will also stand for a time in the beautiful land. He's talking about Israel. With destruction in his hand. And he will set his face to come with the authority of his whole kingdom, bringing with him an equitable proposal, which he will put into effect. He will also give, it's probably the Jews having to pay money to perform their cultus amongst them. He will also give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she will not take a stand for him or be on his side. Then he will turn his face to the coastlands and capture many. But a ruler will make his reproach against him cease. Moreover, he will repay him for his reproach. So he will turn his face toward the fortress of his own land. But he will stumble and fall and be found no more. Then in his place one will stand who will have an oppressor pass through the jewel of his kingdom. Yet within a few days he will be broken, though not in anger nor in battle. Now I apologize. That was probably wrong to assume that that was the agreement that the Jews made with Rome to at least be able to do their religion, although it may be. And in his place a despised person will stand, to whom the splendor of the kingdom has not been given, but he will come in a time of ease and take hold of the kingdom by intrigue. But the overflow, this is where I was saying he's going to go right through like a historical rundown of all these things that are going to happen. But the overflowing might will be flooded away before him and broken, and also the prince of the covenant. But the overflowing might will be flooded away before him and broken, and also the prince of the covenant. And after an alliance is made with him, he will practice deception. And he will go up and gain power with a small force of people. In a time of ease, he will enter the richest parts of the province. And he will do what his fathers never did, nor his fathers' fathers. He will distribute plunder, spoil, and possessions among them. And he will devise his schemes against strongholds, but only for a time. And he will stir up his strength and heart against the king of the south with a great military force. So the king of the south will wage a war with an extremely large and mighty military force for war. But he will not stand, for schemes will be devised against him. And those who eat his choice food will break him, and his military force will overflow. But many will fall down slain. And as for both kings, their hearts will be intent on evil, and they will speak falsehood at the same table. But it will not succeed, for the end is still to come at the appointed time. Then he will return to his land with great possessions, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant. And he will take action, and then return to his own land. At that appointed time he will return and come into the south. But this last time it will not happen the way it did before. Indeed, ships of Kittim will come against him. Therefore he will be disheartened and will return and become indignant at the holy covenant and take action. So he will come back and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. Mighty forces from him will stand, profane the sanctuary fortress, and abolish the regular sacrifice. And they will set up the abomination of desolation, the standing armies that surround the city. That's Titus and his son Vespasian. And by smooth words he will turn to godlessness those who act wickedly toward the covenant. But the people who know their God will display strength and take action. And those who have insight among the people will give understanding to the many. That's the Christians. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there were those that, as this was happening and they were partaking in the outpouring and came to the full realization that, hey, this is what this is, guys. We screwed up big time. Yet they will fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity and by plunder for many days. Now when they fall, they will be granted a little help, and many will join with them in intrigue. Now this is the Maccabees. The Romans attacked them like 3 more times after they destroyed the temple. They kept pushing them out of the land, and they would gather together, and they would fight again, and they would destroy them, and they get pushed off further. They just had to keep doing this. And some of those who have insight will fall in order to refine, purge, and make them pure until the time of the end, because it is still to come at the appointed time. Now again, he's getting the abomination of desolation set up, right? It's set up. He's setting up his armies. This is going through all the very nature of the way in which these remember 3 Caesars were killed. There's like all this crazy stuff that goes on in a civil war, in a sense, in Rome. Like they just went nuts, getting to the point where the armies of the abomination of desolation and the overarching leadership of it was set up and established. It just hadn't yet arrived. And there's all these Christians that have understanding that are telling these people, this is what's coming, this is what's going to happen, and they're killed in the process of all of this. Then the king will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will speak astonishing things against the God of gods. And he will succeed until the indignation is finished, for that which is decreed will be done. Now, Julius Caesar was the first Caesar, that being the first one of the heads, to start calling himself God. They started making these images of the Caesars holding these statues in their hand that was like a deity with like rays of sunlight coming out of it. And that was a symbol that would only appear in the hands of gods back in the day. And so it showed you that this was a god. And Caesar started calling themselves was God. Like, I am God. You worship me, you bow down to me, you treat me as I am a god. Then he will show no regard for the gods of his fathers, or for the desire of women, nor will he show regard for any other god, for he will magnify himself above them all. And you can imagine, Nero Caesar was a nut job. He most assuredly was filled with self-worship. But instead, he will honor a god of fortresses. Now, a god whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold, silver, costly stones, and desirable things. Now, this is also, again, and he will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. See, he's going to take action against the strongest of fortresses. That would be Herod's fortress that he built up around Jerusalem. And the temple is like the representation of God in the earth. Now, of course, they were wicked. Those that were supposed to be doing, what they should have been doing. They should have received the Messiah, to be perfectly honest with you. But it was not determined for them to do that. And he will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god, and he will give great honor to those who recognize him, and will cause them to rule over the many, and will apportion land for a price. And at the time of the end, the king of the south will collide with him, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, with horsemen, and with many ships, and he will enter lands, overflow them, and pass through. And he will also enter the beautiful land, and many countries will fall, but these will be rescued out of his hand: Edom, Moab, and the foremost of the sons of Ammon. Then he will send forth his hand against other countries, and the land of Egypt will not escape, but he will rule over the hidden treasures of gold and silver, and over all the desirable things of Egypt. And Libyans and Ethiopians will follow at his heels. But reports from the east and from the north will dismay him, and he will go forth with great wrath to destroy, and devote many to destruction. And he will pitch the tent of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain. And he will come to his end, and no one will help him. Now they did encamp between the sea and Israel. Now at that time, now this is chapter 12. Subtitling is The End of the Days. The end of the end of days, right? The end of the days. Now at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will stand. Michael the archangel, who cast Satan out of heaven by the command of God. And Christ said, I saw Satan cast down from heaven as a bolt of lightning falls from the sky. So and I'm not saying, I think that the binding of Satan was when Christ was baptized. I really do, because Jesus says, I saw Satan cast down from heaven. He didn't say, I cast Satan down from heaven. Christ was here on the earth, and he saw Satan get cast down from heaven. That's how you know Jesus isn't Michael the archangel like the Jehovah's Witnesses all try to tell everybody. The great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people will stand, and there will be a time of distress such as never happened since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, the Hebrew people, everyone who is found written in the book will be rescued. First century Christian Jews. And also, anybody else that was a Christian, I suppose. But he's talking about your people, the Hebrew people. So he's making that delineation. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake. Why many of them? These to everlasting life, but the others to reproach and everlasting contempt. Why is it many, but not all? Well, the reason not all of them are going to awake is because, as we see, there are only those who had the gospel message of Jesus Christ who were beheaded that were raised as the first fruits. Now, folks, you can't have the first fruits being raised thousands of years after. They were the first fruits. They had the gospel message of Christ Jesus, and they were beheaded for his word, and they're under the altar. And only those were able to be raised throughout the millennium until the 1,000 years had finished and all of these things were completed. Now, the 1,000 years is that 40-year generation when Jesus said, this generation will not pass away until all things be fulfilled. So the 1,000 years, again, was just the term that they used to mean the completeness and the fullness of a thing. So the reason all that were dead in the dust didn't raise at that point was because some of them, the first fruits, already had been raised under the altar of Christ, on the altar of God. But others to reproach and everlasting contempt. Everlasting contempt. I was just listening to William Bell. He's in that Don Preston clique and group. And he just put out a video today talking about how, when you go to hell, you're just extinguished and you die, and it was the everlasting. It's also could be thought of as the end of that age. So at the end of that age, they're extinguished and they're gone. No, this is everlasting contempt. And those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Now, guys, I just read to you the resurrection, right? Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. But as for you, Daniel, conceal the words and seal up the book until the time of the end. Many will go to and fro, and knowledge will increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others were standing, one on this bank of the river, and on the other bank of the river. And one said to the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be until the end of these wonders? And I heard the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, as he raised his right hand and his left hand toward heaven. And he swore by him who lives forever, that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. That's 3.5 years. And as soon as they complete shattering the power of the holy people, all these events will be completed. Folks, who were the holy people that Daniel would have been made, that Daniel could have even would have even associated as the holy people? The Hebrew people. And how was their power going to be shattered? What was the holy people's power in the first century? When Jesus said, not one stone will be left standing in this temple. Not one stone will be left on another. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you stone the prophets that I send to you. You scourge them. Some you will crucify. How long I wished to gather you together, but you were not willing. You were not willing. He was saying this to the Sadducees and the Pharisees. He was saying this to the religious leaders. You were not willing to come together. I would have gathered your hens together I would have gathered your children together like a hen gathers her chicks. But you scribes and you Pharisees and you Sadducees, you were not willing. So when the power of the holy people was shattered is when the resurrection takes place. And all of this happens when the Messiah comes at the end of Daniel's, 3.5 years into the last week of Daniel's 70 weeks. And Jesus said, this generation will not pass away until all things that are written be fulfilled. As for me, I heard but could not understand. So I said, my Lord, what will be the outcome of these events? He's like, what? Then he said, go your way, Daniel. For these words are concealed and sealed up until the time of the end. Many will be purged, purified, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand. But those who have insight will understand. But from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Okay. So, how blessed is he who keeps waiting and reaches to the 1,335 days, he says. But as for you, go your way to the end. Then you will enter into rest and stand again for your allotted portion at the end of the days. That's the resurrection, folks. When the power of the holy people is shattered, when the abomination of desolation is set up. What did Jesus say? When you see the abomination of desolation surround the city, you flee to the mountains. Don't you even get off the rooftops to go down into your house to get your cloak, lest you share in the wrath that is about to be poured out on the holy people when their power is shattered. Matthew chapter 24. Now again, remember I said, Paul says that he preached the word, the gospel message, to all of creation, to every creature, to every nation. He says, I have preached it to all people. All the peoples of the earth have heard this message. It has been preached unto every nation. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be proclaimed in the whole world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. This is Matthew chapter 24, verse 14 and on. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken... Oh, I got to back up. I got to back up here. Jerusalem, Jerusalem. This is chapter 23, verse 37. Who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. This is Jesus talking. How often I wanted to gather your children together, the way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you did not want it. As he's speaking to those rabbis. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate. He's saying that to them in the first century, to their faces. The religious leaders over Jerusalem, over Israel. For I say to you, from now on, you will not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And the last time they saw him was when Christ was making the ascension up to be crucified, on Passover. And Christ was brought out and crucified on Passover. And at the same time, the priest was bringing up their Passover sacrifice, and they sing, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. That's the psalm that they're singing when that happens. And that was the time that they saw Jesus again. When they could see him with their eyes. Okay? It's not that all the people in Israel are going to all convert to Christianity and go, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, and then Jesus is going to come zooming in on a cloud and they're all going to see him or something. And coming out of the temple, Jesus was going along. His disciples came up to point out the temple buildings to him. And he answered and said to them, do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down. Now as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? These two questions are answered with one answer because they are both to be understood as being the same thing. The coming of Christ and the end of the age when the temple will be destroyed. What will be the sign of this coming and of the end of the age of your coming, Jesus? And Jesus answered and said to him, see to it that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many, like Simon Bar-Giora and all of the other ones before him. And you are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See to it that you're not alarmed, for those things must take place, but that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and in various places there will be famines and earthquakes. But all these are merely the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you. And you will be hated by all the nations because of my name. Now all the nations was Rome. All the different tribes and tongues and nations and peoples that was out there in the waters of the beast of the water. That was the Roman Empire that surrounded them. And it did. They went into a civil war trying to, after Nero committed suicide and all the tribulation he put Christians through, then they all were killing each other trying to become the next Caesar and going nuts and garrisoning their armies and doing all their craziness. And at that time, many will fall away and will betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and will deceive many. And because lawlessness is multiplied, most people's love will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be proclaimed in the whole world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place is Israel. It's Jerusalem amongst all of Israel. Let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea, the holy place, must flee to the mountains. Whoever is on the housetop must not go down to get the things out that are in his house. People don't hang out on their housetops. That's a first century Jewish thing that they did. They stayed up on the rooftops. Get a clue, folks. And whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his garment. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. But pray that your flight be not in the winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. And unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Behold, I have told you in advance. Therefore, if they say to you, behold, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. Or behold, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe them. For just as lightning comes from the east and appears even to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. And the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet. They will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. Now the elect were all the saints that had died from the beginning of time, right on up till then. And Jesus is speaking hyperbolically. In the glory of the Father, Christ is going to come. And the sun, moon, and stars were all darkened and cast down, and all the high places were laid low, and the moon was turned to blood, and the sun didn't give its light. When God came in judgment against Babylon and Egypt, when he came on the clouds, it was the same hyperbolic language. Now, that's not to say that literal things weren't happening. Okay? Literal thing. Not everything is spiritualized. Not everything is figurative. Not everything is hyperbolic. God had volcanoes erupt and just drop, hailstones of flaming fire on the people in Egypt. They actually did a scientific study on it. I think it was the guy they called the naked archaeologist. The volcano erupted, and as it went up into the atmosphere, they were frozen balls of embers from the volcano that came down and landed on people in Egypt. And you know how you've seen how water, it get like a big deposit just boils out, and it's like CO2. And the water turns the color of rust because of all the iron in there. And it sends this layer of CO2 and it kills all the people that are on the bottom. Well, the Hebrew people would sleep on their rooftops, and all the youngest firstborn children of the Egyptians would sleep on ground level. And the CO2 that comes through it, it happened recently in Africa, where this big lake where everybody used to go down to drink with, and all this like deadly CO2 came out, the angel of death, as God called it, and it killed all the people around the area that were there because there was just no oxygen in the air. They didn't know, and they all just died. Well, all these things had natural things that God did sovereignly to kill them. Like when the meteorites came out of heaven and destroyed that army that they were having to attack. I mean, you think God isn't sovereign and that Calvinism's not true? God knew to send meteorites from the moment he created all things waiting for that one day for that army of those people and all their free will choices to be standing right there to get smashed and destroyed. God knew they were going to be there before they ever got there. Anyways, now learn the parable of the fig tree. And then obviously, you find in the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus says the exact same thing, but he doesn't say when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet surrounding the city. He says when you see standing armies surrounding Jerusalem, that's when you flee to the mountains. That's when you know. When you see the fig tree putting forth its leaves, you know you're at the time. You know that the time is there. So what's going to be the sign of your coming? What's going to be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age and of the destruction of the temple and all the things that Daniel was speaking of when the power of the holy people is shattered and the desolations are poured out? That was 70 AD. That was when Rome surrounded Jerusalem, and then they backed off, and the Christians fled to Pella, and they were saved. And then they came back in and destroyed everything. They leveled it. They put to death the harlotrous bride, the harlot that was riding the beast of Rome that says, "We have no king but Caesar. Let his blood be on us and our children." And as Jesus was being carried on up to be crucified, when he was being carried on up to be crucified, and let's see if I can find it. I know it's in Luke. I'll say Luke 22, maybe 23. Okay. Free Barabbas, they're saying. But Pilate again addressed them, wanting to release Jesus. See, Pilate wanted to release Jesus. There's a reason why God came to judge them, right? Because they just wouldn't have it. There we go. And following him, this is Jesus carrying his cross. This is Luke chapter 23, verse, I guess 26 we'll start at. And when they led him away, they took hold of a man, Simon of Cyrene, coming in from the country, and placed on him the cross to carry behind Jesus. And following him was a large multitude of people and of women who were mourning and lamenting him. But Jesus, turning to them, said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, stop crying for me, but cry for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed. For they will begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us. For if they do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry? Now to others also who were criminals were being led away to be put to death with him." See, that's a direct quotation from another Old Testament verse. But you see, I believe that's probably even in the book of Revelation. He's saying the days are coming. And again, Daniel, seal up the words of this book. Read Revelation. John, do not seal up the words. When was it to be unsealed? At the time of the end. Okay? That's when it's unsealed. That's when he says you seal it up until the time of the end. And they were waiting for the revelation of Jesus. And the revelation of Jesus came in the book Revelation. And the angel says, John, do not seal up the words of this book, for the time is here. The time is near. Get ready, baby, because it's all coming down. The resurrection was in the first century. All things have been fulfilled in this book. From the first page to the last page, that is the finished work of Christ Jesus. And you can't say that unless you're a covenant eschatologist. You can't say that unless you're a full preterist. And you can't enter into the kingdom of heaven as the bride of Christ to receive your inheritance as a mansion made for you by Christ Jesus. See, in the Hebrew tradition, when you were betrothed to a woman, you would go to your father's place and you would build for your bride and yourself the place where you were going to be dwelling off of your father's house. And you would come back at a time when nobody knew the day or hour that you were going to come back. But when you came back, that was it, man. It was time for the marriage supper, right? He would take the wine and say, this is my blood that I have poured out for you, and to protect you and to keep you. This is the blood of my life that I am saying, I will pour this out for you to protect you, my love. And they would smash it on the ground, right? And then he would take his bride back to the place where he had prepared the place for her. And he would receive her unto himself. Okay? The resurrected bodies that we receive when we die, as Paul said, you fool, that which is raised cannot be raised unless it dies first. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. And Jesus said, I go to my Father's kingdom to prepare a place for you. But I will always be with you, even unto the end of the age. I am with you. So shall we ever be with the Lord. And so we are to live our lives out in this earthly kingdom, because behold, the kingdoms of this world have been made the kingdoms of our Lord. And even before he came back to do that, Jesus said, all power and authority in heaven and on this earth has been given to me. So, folks, I hope that this reading has been a tremendous blessing to you. And I hope that for those of you who have watched and have watched again and that have sort of followed along with me here, I hope you're getting the big picture. The literal physical earth, the sun's not going to go dark and the moon's not going to turn to blood, and the stars in heaven aren't just going to get, gravitationally zapped down to the planet and kill and destroy everything, and a third of all the land and all the earth is going to be burnt up, and a third of all the fish and all the ocean are going to die, and all this and that. It's Israel centric. When it says a third of the earth is burnt, or 2/3 of the earth, or whatever it is, it's referring to the land, not the earth. The translators are using the word earth in many places where they are supposed to be using the word land, and you can literally translate it land. And if they want to use the earth in a grand sort of telescoped perspective, kind of showing the grandioseness of this thing, that's fine also. God speaks figuratively. So, guys, praise the Lord. This is incredible. This is the most beautiful thing that there is. And I know I've been going on for a very long time, but I'm just going to say a prayer here before I do close this out. Dear Lord Jesus, I pray that your truth of your word would reach all of those that are listening to this video. And I pray that you would open their eyes to this truth and let them come into the true acceptance of what your word has taught and has always taught. And I know all these different all these different varieties of Christianity have been warring and raging about what this book of Revelation means and what is going on here, and all these different eschatologies, the premillennial dispensationalists and the pre-wrath rapture folks and the pre-trib rapture folks and the post-millennialists and the amillennialists. I pray that they would all pay attention to what this is saying, and I pray that we would all realize the foolishness of all these different varieties, and that we would all come under the same umbrella and know that Christ is King right now over all the kingdoms of this earth, and God appoints even wicked leaders of his choosing to be appointed as rulers of nations. And he puts us out here so that it would give occasion and rise for our testimony to them of your word, that we can preach, that we can be the light of the world and the salt of the earth, so that we can receive rewards in heaven when we bear fruit unto you, dear God, and that we can receive rewards in heaven when they hate us and they do all manner of wickedness and evil to us, and that you can receive glory and honor and justification when you cast those wicked, sinful people into hell, and we can worship you and give you glory for judging righteously according to your will and according to your purposes. Dear God, let this message reach everybody that watches it, so they can all come to a fullness of the knowledge and understanding of your truth in Jesus Christ and his finished work. Amen. And amen, baby! The Covenant Eschatologist here, wrapping up this extra long video for you all of the reading of the book of Daniel. Thank you so much for coming along with me, and we will see you the next time through. Take care, guys. God bless you.